It's our story. Jim Tuscher, St. Louis, Missouri.
I went back up to upstate, finished my degree, taught for a year and a half, went to graduate school in Columbia, Missouri. And because in those days they'd taken one campus, and the feds had taken one campus in each of the 10 federal districts and made them accessible, what they called accessible in those days. And Columbia, Missouri was the Region 7 campus. And I went there, and they had a bus with a lift on it that went around the campus every hour and on the half hour. And I was sitting on the bus one day, and I looked out at the lift, and there was a guy that looked an awful lot like Speed Davis coming up on the lift. And sure enough, it was Speed Davis going to the University of Missouri. He's from Kansas. I was from upstate New York. I expected I'd never see him again. But we ran into each other there, knew each other when we were at the university. And he left and took a job with Social Security, I believe it was. And I finished my graduate degree, came here and worked at the community college. And I was, Ginny Laurie of all people had invited me to come onto the board of the, NPF, National Paraplegic Foundation, I believe it was. And I knew nothing about Ginny Laurie, knew nothing about the National Paraplegic Foundation, but I thought at least if they'd elected me to a board, unknown to me, it was at least worth going to see who these people were. So I went, and at that meeting I met Max and Ginny Laurie and Joe Laurie and so on. And
what year was that?
oh Lord, it was shortly after they came back to St. Louis, because I just within a month before that, I'd gotten in the mail at the campus a little. It was either Toomey Gazette or the Rehabilitation Gazette. I'm not sure which it was, but it showed Joe Laurie pulling a cart full of stuff up the ramp on their front house up there on Maryland, or up on Maryland. And I had no idea why. I'd published an article on community colleges and the accessibility to people with disabilities, and I thought, and that was published in a rehabilitation journal. I think it was the Journal of Rehabilitation. And I thought, so that's put me into the rehab circles, which I'd fought to stay out of when I was in graduate school. But I thought that's how I got the invitation. I really think it was because I'd met Max's sister, was a student at Forest Park at the time, the campus that I was working at. And she'd come by and tell me about her brother that had traveled to California and met some famous guy. It turns out it was Ed Roberts. And he had a concept of building an apartment complex, and then down on the ground floor they'd have shops and places where people with disabilities could work. And of course I was working in a community college, and I was ensconced out in a 4-bedroom house in the woods in Kirkwood, so that sounded like an appalling concept to me, but I met him at the NPF meeting and found out he wasn't at all an appalling person, and became great friends. And he eventually lured me away from a secure job at the community college, and got into the independent living disability rights movement. And Max had already lured me into getting into fights with a local transportation provider. So as an avocation, I was doing disability rights as I could on the side, and regretting that I couldn't put more time in it. And talking hours on the phone with Max about disability rights and so on.
Did you hook up with ADAPT?
ADAPT wasn't around here much. They came to town several years after that, when the fight was down the road a little bit. But
so did you ever get arrested?
No.
Disobedience?
No.
No civil disobedience, huh?
on the edge but never arrested. At Paraquad, Max may disagree with me on this, but we took more of a legal, political approach to things. And in fact, I started working at Paraquad in '79, and then in 1990, I believe it was, Max relieved me of my program responsibilities and just turned me loose on the legislature as a lobbyist for Paraquad. And we'd already accomplished quite a bit down there, getting consumer-controlled personal assistance programs started, we were one of the early states in state funding for centers for independent living, and actually got quite a bit of money going into centers to establish centers for independent living. And in a state a little over 5 million, we got 21 centers for independent living now, and it sort of took on a life of its own after a while. So we've taken more of approach like that. We support ADAPT, absolutely, and my personal philosophy is that there's an unknown number of ways that we can get from where we are today in the disability rights movement to where we ought to be, and that we should be encouraging each other to take our own path. If one's political, so be it. If one's more civil disobedience, so be it. I think we need all that stuff. I think we need it all going on out there. We need people getting in politics as politicians, and we need people getting involved in politics as lobbyists. We need people doing civil disobedience. We need people who with disabilities who register to vote, educate themselves, and vote. And vote their interests based on disability. There's potential power. There's tremendous potential to the disability vote. I don't know how much you've come across that, but here in the state of Missouri, we've got, in a state of, well, it's over 5 million now, but we've got just about 900,000 people of voting age with disabilities. And that's a huge potential block of voters if we can ever get it organized.
The It's Our Story project is a national effort to make disability history public and accessible. Visit us at www.itsourstory.org or on the It's Our Story project YouTube channel.